pass it to the next person. They're going to look at it and they're going to respond with another line gesture. You're going to pass it around that way. Go around maybe 4 times. And you're just going to shape a design that way. Any questions?
I don't want to use black line.
Just one line?
Well, it could be a gesture. It could be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be connected. There's no rules. It's just you have to do one line gesture. And then the next person looks at it and adds to it. It's a reaction.
Are we just using one piece of paper?
You're using one piece of paper. You go around 4 times. Whoever wants to start. On your mark. Do we have our weapons?
Yes.
Go!
We all use the same
How many rounds do we do?
4.
4 rounds?
You can go around some more. I'll be back.
How many left-handed people have they right-handed people?
Interesting. Some people are. No, just watching how.
Does it have to be continuous? Like once you start, can you like do can you lift the pen and do like
Okay, can we go on? I don't want this to take too much longer. Okay, let me just say a couple things. We're going to do this 2 more times, but in different ways. The next one, I want us to do it as what's called, in password, there used to be a thing called the lightning round.
Yes.
Lightning round. This time, we're going to close our eyes and only open our eyes when the paper and the pen is handed to us. We're going to look and we're going to have an instant reaction. We're going to do our reaction and then we're going to pass it on and you're going to close your eyes again. And what I want you to notice this time is your impulse. Just be aware of your impulse. Okay? You open your eyes when you get the paper, you look at it, you react, and then you pass it. So there should be no talking this time around. A new one. This is a new one. Clean slate. Yeah, whatever you do, don't think about it. It doesn't matter if you can lift the pen, you can not lift the pen, you can connect, you can not connect. It's up to you. Okay? You keep your eyes closed until you've got the paper. You can open your eyes when you have the paper. You have to open your eyes when you have the paper. You want to start again?
We're already
It's a gesture. You can do gesture. You can do more.
Is this 4 rounds?
Yeah, go around 4 times. But you can open your eyes when you're doing it. Yeah, good. We did that. Okay. Okay, are we ready? Almost. Thought lightning was faster than this.
Interesting to find out.
Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to look at the second version, the second picture that you just did, and talk about it in terms of the design and what's going on, the activity. Okay, talk about it with your group. Just look at that second one, not the first one. Just the second one.
There's no real actual composition. Yeah, much more comprehensive. Collection of signatures. Yeah, exactly. Collection of signatures. It's like the piece of paper.
Okay, can I have everyone's attention? I'm assuming that you had enough time to analyze this second picture. Okay, this next one we're going to do really lightning. And because there's some other things I want to do and I don't have much more time. We'd go until 1 o'clock? Okay. This next time, I want that everyone's going to have a specific intention. Each group is going to end up with a design that's going to contrast this second one. It's just going to, the one we just did. What you're going to do now is going to be a contrast to that one. But the process is exactly the same. So your intention now is to create something that's contrasted with this. And that's the only intention that you have. You only look at it when you have the page in front of you. Ready? You're finished. You're just looking at what's, but you know what the one is that you're contrasting. Same process of the second one, but the intention now is to create a design that will contrast that second design. Yes?
How much time? Are you like 1 second, 5 seconds? What's the like?
Oh, just do it fast, don't think about it. Okay, you done?
Yeah.
comparison between your second and third drawings and see if you were successful in creating a design that contrasted the second one. Okay. Quickly, I've got 5 minutes. Ultimately, it would be nice to be able to spend more time with this, but let me just say, sorry, I can't go around and hear what you've all discussed, but do you feel that you achieved the contrast between the second and the third? Yeah? No?
There was more contrast between the first and the second.
There's more. Okay, and then that's a whole other discussion if we had time, because the difference in the processes was the first one, you had a lot more time to think about it, and there's probably a different kind of thinking that was going on. One of the things that I'd like you to do is just look at the handout that I put down at your feet. And these are the questions that I deal with in this class that I'm teaching. And I'm just going to read them off, and we might discuss them a little later in the session, we'll see. But what is our contemporary soundscape, and how does that shape our lives? And usually when we discuss that in the class, they talk about a lot of noise. So what other noise do we experience, and what about our mental noise, the chatter that we have constantly going on inside our brains that can talk us out of doing things, or talk us into doing things, or whatever, or distract us? How does our work relate to a larger, diverse global population? How can our art make a contribution to society and the art form? How can an artist have specific intention yet remain present and flexible in order to contextualize their vision? And this is sort of what this touches upon and gets going. And we eventually in the class turn the blank page into the stage, and the stage then is what you sketch on, and the choreographer is the pen. And it's mind-boggling to see how people react to that. But I have no idea what to do. They just need to go in knowing what they're going to do before they do it, which is an interesting concept.
Both the musicians and the dancers react in that way.
I haven't done this with musicians.
Oh, I'm sorry. See, I thought it was just choreographers.
No, but I have them act as musicians. Okay, so then this is talking about the class, but I want to go down, you can read that on your own. More of the questions centered around whether the future of the art lies in community-created projects, such as choreography, painting, and other visual arts, with democratically created choreography being the popular approach to making work. Many young choreographers view taking charge of the process as selfish. Now, this is what I've come up with. They say, well, how do you even think that you have something that you can say and show other people and not have their input? There are critics and historians that view single choreographer approaches as old-fashioned and autocratic. So some questions that I just want to pose is the voice of the individual artist less important today? Is this something unique to dance as an art form? Collaborative efforts can be highly valuable for achieving something that could only be Collaborative efforts can be highly valuable for achieving something that could only be achieved by participants putting their egos aside for the good of the whole. But where does that leave the individual artists? And then is the purpose of community-based creativity to involve more people, to give people who may not consider themselves artists a chance to become participants in art making, to help broaden the audience of arts by making it more participatory, to make it more reflective of a wider demographic than of a single person's point of view. So my whole point is not to throw collaborative processes out, but at the same time, how do you empower a choreographer to take leadership and to really trust that they have a voice? And it can be through shaping things in a collage-like manner, through manipulating material similarly to what we just did, or to taking total control and showing things through example and being the choreographer in the more old-fashioned. Yes?
You know, I mean, is there a lot of community, with democratically created choreography?
Well, I have to tell you that, yeah.
It's not something that I encounter. I mean, well, I don't know, maybe I'm just not in the...
Well, no, a lot of, look at Martha Clark, look at, Martha Clark comes out of the office, but Liz Lehrman, David Dorfman, they all pull from the dancers. They all have the dancers that, contribute to the material. And a lot of the dancers, through the experiences that I'm throwing out at them, they have to keep changing roles. Sometimes they're a dancer participating as, more of a choreographic participant in creating movement that they contribute. Sometimes they're switching off, like switching the pens around, so each choreographer has 5 minutes to choreograph on a small group, and then they switch roles, and one of the other dancers, and then that becomes raw material for something else.
But doesn't the choreographer have the ultimate decision whether to use that material?
Well, that's the question. And that's, if they're not trained to even think that that is a viable possibility, then they don't rise to the occasion. Because what I've been finding is more young dancers who have only grown up in the competition dance studio world. Once they get to college, they see, wow, things are very different. Their only connection with a choreographer showing them what to do has been in that old model. The new model is a more democratic approach. So they don't want to go back to the other because they don't know that it's possible to do that in a different language.
Especially happens with improvisation.
Improvisation, yeah.
Especially happens with improvisation.
Well, I was just saying that the democratic is not really the appropriate word.
Say that.
You took Dorfman as an example. He's doing the decision, he's accessing the creative input of people.
Exactly.
Performing, so forget about democracy.
Right, but the reason I use that is because they see it as a democratic process when they're participating in it. And sure, ultimately, the choreographer will have the final say, and it's their vision, and hopefully they give credit to the dancers as collaborating artists. It's not always the case, but when you have dancers going through programs in universities and they're being trained in these manners, what I don't want to see happen is them to get to the point where they're out and they don't think that it's their right to say, I think that duet is really beautiful, but it doesn't work for this piece. You know? They don't know that that's their right. They think that's being selfish. Okay? So it's very helpful in many ways, but at the same time, what else is possible? Yeah. I also have, I've got plenty of stuff. It then transfers over to making movement and to making music, but it's all part of the same deal.
They're very advanced, they're very comfortable with and outside you're trying to load music in their head.
I'm not trying to load it. They're exploring on their
So
own.
if you're going with movement, how do you manipulate that?
Okay, really quickly, and then I know we've got to go on. What we just did was halfway through the semester, we spent a lot of time developing these techniques. I put all of the movement that we've videotaped and created so far into iMovie. Then I looked at the times of each of the clips, and I went through my iTunes library and organized it by time. And because the first music unit that we study is, outside of the whole beautiful noise thing, which you should look at, is minimalism and medieval music. So I just choose music that is in both of these categories and put it with the stuff that they've done. And we look at it and we start to see it in different ways. And there was just one thing that we did where it was small groups. Each dancer was a choreographer for 5 minutes. They created really beautiful things. Then the next day, I went in and said, okay, now all of this stuff that you've just done is going to be raw material for 3 choreographers to tag team choreograph. The only intention is that we have to use the whole space and we have to use all the dancers. And their reaction when they saw that was they were pissed. They were so angry because their stuff was not used the way it was intended, and they were so attached to what they had made the day before that they couldn't let go of it, and they couldn't see what we had done. So a couple days later, once I had put it together with everything in context with music, they said, wow, that was really good. And it really works well with the music. And it doesn't necessarily have to be even related to that other stuff that we did. So again, what it points to is how their judgment colored their reaction to what they had created. So you're constantly bringing all of these things into play and holding the mirror up. And I'm always asking them to find other situations outside of the classroom, just in their daily life where this stuff comes up. And it's a lot of fun. Huh?
Before we go into Kathy's, I want to see what everybody did.
Oh, yeah.
I asked John if you could hang them on the walls, and he said yes. So if you feel comfortable doing that, he's getting us some tape. If you want to go back to the circle, that's fine. Or just pull your chair closer. We'll turn it over to Kathy. Lead the discussion. Why did that try sharp? Okay, so Kathy has the
Okay, well, all this reminded me of the first time I met my colleague Andy Warshaw. I don't know if you all know, he just walked in. We were both at Lincoln Center Institute. He was a teacher who went into schools to teach in this experiential way, and I was working on administration, and I got to experience his class. He was playing beautiful CD of kora music, the African plucking instrument. And he said, all right, we're going to go around the circle and everybody just sing a little bit about somebody you loved in your life. And somebody sang about our aunts and so forth, and all of us who had never met each other and maybe were a little bit nervous about singing in public. He got us introduced, and then he said, all right, now we're going to study some African music. And this got us into it in the most wonderful way that I obviously still remember many years later. My career in teaching is very slim compared to most of you. I'm making a new career of replacing Andy's. As Andy Warshaw didn't want to do 2 sessions last year, so I taught first semester of music for dance in Marymount, Manhattan. And this year, Andy Tierstein wanted to go take his semester off and write a dissertation on Schoenberg. So I'm replacing Andy Tierstein at Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. And I've had now 31 students that Bill Moulton had last year for introductory elements of music. At Marymount Manhattan, the students have had a semester of rhythmic training. So I have experienced teaching, using my own textbook, the ear training for the body, last year at Marymount, but I used that as a basis, and then we also had to learn history of music and bring in literature and bring in collaboration, and we managed to do that somehow. This year, Andy Tierstein wanted me to use the Roger Carrion textbook, this music appreciation, and so I've become among the grumblers. I did not think that does the dance students a service to just send them over to the music department for music appreciation. They need to know a lot more, and they need to know different things than the general college student who's doing it as music appreciation. So maybe we all need to talk at some point at the end of the weekend. Are there ways that we can pool our resources and ideas and create some materials, not necessarily books, maybe things on the internet, where we can share these ideas that are obviously so effective. Something for us to think about during the weekend. So some years ago, the grumblers were grumbling that there were no textbooks at all about music for dancers. So at that point, nobody else was putting the seated pants on seated chairs, so I did, and wrote that ear training for the body, but obviously gleaning a lot of insights from very, very generous artists all over the country. People, dancers and musicians alike, were enormously generous in sharing their thoughts and their experiences. So I don't take full credit for that, but I did sit down and rethink all the elements of music. One question that I like to ask is if you could choose only one thing that you want your dance students to learn, what's the bottom line? Just one thing. We'll hear everybody's ideas in just a minute. I'm going to talk for about 5 minutes and that's it. And I think the best answer I got so far was from Katie Lannon, who's the chairwoman of the dance department at Marymount Manhattan. She said, I want them to know what happens between the beats. That's very related to what you just demonstrated. So this occurred to me this last Wednesday. The students at NYU and I were listening and studying the score of Beethoven's Creatures of Prometheus ballet. We had the full score, and although, ear training for the body, it also is a shortcut and helpful to them. If they see things, I always say the last thing they need to know is to be able to read specific pitches, but you can gain a lot of information from a score immediately without having any idea what the specific pitches are. So we did this, and one student said, oh, are we going to listen to Beethoven? Oh, good, I love Beethoven. But didn't he just write symphonies? I didn't know he wrote a ballet. And they were delighted listening to it. Another student raised his hand afterwards, and he said, you know, even if I didn't know that there was a scenario, that there was a story to this ballet, I sense there's some sort of story. There's dramatic action and different kinds of people doing different kinds of things. What makes that? And then we got to talking about, well, what's happening between the beats? There was one episode where they could see very clearly the strings play chords, eighth note west, chord, eighth note west, chord, eighth note west. It goes on for a whole page of the score. And this is the point where the creatures Prometheus has brought to life, the male and female, are taking their first steps as live human beings. In another place, they noticed, oh, there's syncopation. So they knew the concept of syncopation. They could recognize it rhythmically, and they could hear the effect of it. In another of the episodes, they could see on the page double-dotted rhythms. Thump, da-dum, ba-dum. And we talked about how the use of dotted rhythms both in Lully, which we had already studied, and in this particular Beethoven, how that brings the emphasis on the next beat. the staccato figuration. They could see this visually and they could hear it. And there were many other details in the score. Obviously, in 1 hour, we couldn't listen to the whole CD, but I sort of gave them a running commentary, and they watched the score, and we listened to a good deal of the music. And afterwards, a young man came up, and he said, "Oh, we all know Beethoven for his symphonies. How come people don't know this ballet?" I forgot to say, the last known big performance of this I could ascertain was Frederick Ashton in 1970 for Royal Ballet. And if anybody saw this other one, please let me know. In this last May, students at Penn State apparently did it. One of their teachers at Penn State choreographed it in combination with combining the story with Frankenstein. And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. But one of my students in class said, oh, yes, that's because the subtitle of the Frankenstein book by Mary Shelley is Frankenstein, a creature of Prometheus?
A modern comedian.
A modern Prometheus, right. So they knew more than I did. I had to read the book. So you get all these associations that come up that are just wonderful. But one student then said, well, we know the symphonies of Beethoven. How did he get these ideas? How did he make a whole piece of music? How did he make this long ballet? How did he get the germ of an idea? How do you compose music for ballet now? How do you do it? And I said, well, you're really getting to the heart of the relationship between music and dance. And then we talked a little bit about how Salvatore Vigano had given Beethoven a scenario which unfortunately was lost, but Stanley Applebaum in the Dover edition recreates it very nicely. So you can get an idea of what's happening with each episode. So I said that's something we're going to talk about more when we talk about collaboration and how do musicians and dancers work together, and choreographers and composers. And he said, well, in Beethoven's time, how was it? Did people look down on composers of music for dance? That sort of hit me. I said, well, that's an interesting thing to explore. I don't know what the attitude was, but we do know that Beethoven was very, very proud of this particular symphony. And referred to the fact, in the Roger County book, music appreciation, yes, the contra dance. Right? The 16-bar contra dance, that's what's included as the sample of Beethoven's dance music. So they were able to hear this because we've been emphasizing form for classical era and orchestration and the larger ideas. And they were able to hear that Beethoven used the same theme at the finale of Prometheus and uses it in rondo form. And so this is a similar use which he picked up and uses the same theme in the third movement of the last movement of the Eroica Symphony. And for those of you who don't know the ballet, Prometheus was 1801, and that was a year after his first symphony was 1800. So this was an early work, but it's very beautiful if you don't know it. I have to admit I did. I've never seen it dance. Has anybody seen it dance? No. We'll have to see what the Penn State people did. If they got a videotape of it, I think I'll write and ask. That would be very interesting. So this question of, well, did people look down on composers for ballet? Was that considered a less thing? And I told the student, and I believe this very firmly, I said, it's a question sometimes of skill, that it takes a particular kind of composer who is particularly sensitive to dance movement and to ways of working with a choreographer and collaborating comfortably, and there are different ways of doing this. And not all composers could do this, and that's certainly the case now. I know many of your works and look forward to hearing more, that many of you write much, much better scores for dance than somebody who's got a
I have had a core objective over the years that I've done it, and I floundered around and trying to name it. I said it's about their response to music, and I want it to be continually growing in depth and scope. But then after I said that, I found another word. Listening can be and should be an audacious act. You need nerve to connect what you hear to what matters to you, to say what matters to you about that piece, what you're going to do with it. And that's really, I think, at the center of my concerns. I want them to do what they need to do with the music, but I want that to be an informed response.
I said the idea of silence, the concept of the importance of complete rest.
Of what?
Rest.
Silence.
Silence.
I said to disagree with subdivision of people the concept of what you do with either motion and sound, or motion with sound, motion without sound, vice versa. I want sound for this like motion with motion. It's just all of their interpretation. Kind of relating to what I think you said.
And I would say this, helping them learn to create voices. I guarantee this is audacious ways, but the creative voices, different ways that they listen now. If you can increase their listening, then everything else will fall in place, I think.
No?
The question is, what would I teach?
One thing.
One thing.
If it was one thing.
Regardless of whether they're a musician or dancer, one thing they absolutely have to know is how to keep lively time. My philosophy with people that come to me, like I teach guitar, if they come, I also teach Irish music, traditional Irish music, right? If they come to me and they want to be a professional musician and they can't keep time, they can't be a professional musician. It's like the dividing line between reality and non-reality, or hope, or something. But that's the one thing, lively time, period.
I didn't catch the question.
The question is, if there was one thing that you could teach, you just have one thing to teach to dancers, what would it be?
Well, it certainly would be in the area of rhythm, or something like that. I don't know. Let's go on. Maybe I'll think about it for a second.
Norm?
Well, we came up with curiosity and awareness. For me, my primary goal as a teacher when I teach this class, because we have usually 10 weeks. Although I got to teach it in the summer this unit, I really like that because we can really focus, and I can focus. But for me, the main thing that I want to impart in them is a curiosity. Hopefully, I spark a little bit more love of music than they have already, so that when they leave the class, they don't stop thinking about music and they get curious and want to learn more. It means picking up an instrument or however that is, maybe looking at a composer from the past. Sorry, Claudia, maybe you should say.
We forgot you all.
Well, actually, it was along the same lines. That's what you said. I said to groove. It's basically the same thing, because if you can't groove, especially I teach drums, so people come in and they analyze the rhythms, and they go home and come back, the following week, well, I have it, but they don't look at it as a continuum. And I say, if you can't play that rhythm for 5 minutes, or at least a few minutes, because I think they played it 5 times and it got it, and it's actually more of a
It's like John.
I think
That's what my son was saying. He said in the beginning there was rhythm, and he hit the nail on the head.
Well, my idea was just awareness, general awareness. I was saying that everything I learned about teaching, I learned from having very good teachers and being aware of when something was effective in class, what did they do to make it effective? How did they do that? And I was very aware of that. And I mentioned that to someone, and they went, oh, I never thought of, watching my teachers and learning how to teach from my teachers. And I thought,
a little poetic and silly, but singing with their bodies. I wish I would need a magic wand sometimes to do it. Yeah, that's kind of to get to that end result where, you know, they're heart warmers, they're doing things that are you know, what we all want to do.
Mark, did you have anything?
Well, sure. I guess on to Jamal, the other gentleman, I would say rhythm, and to be more specific with drums, normally, you have someone that can play behind the beat, someone that's right on the beat, and someone that plays ahead of the beat or pushes the beat. So I would show them the difference and play examples of drummers that lay behind the beat, like with blues, or stay right on the beat, like with hip-hop, and that push the beat, like with bebop jazz. And, you know, let them listen to what it sounds like and how it feels different. Even though it's still quarter notes, depending on where you lay them, it's going to feel different. And also the second part of that would be accents, like giving them accents of, you know, the pops or certain movements where they have to drop to the floor, and raising and lowering the timbres of the drums as well, too, to indicate, to give a, you know, a feel going into the next movement or the next piece. So,
you know, that's something we've kind of been losing because you know, so much music now is created with click track. We were talking about GarageBand earlier, and drummers and musicians, they're always using a metronome, using a click track, and the way it's produced in the studio, they lay one instrument at a time, and each person's got it. So we've lost so much of the human element where music can breathe. You get faster, like you found play on top of the beat, behind the beat, and there's sections of songs where it needs to get faster. Now people have to think very metronomically, and it's become very mechanical. A lot of music, sensitivity to it.
I just said simplicity, and professional choice always goes in terms of simplicity. But since we're quoting Isaac Stern and talking about Beethoven, Beethoven said, always approach your art with pure heart, because if you don't, you can't make it suit. So I think that's really people with that pure heart won't make a good suit.
I said phrasing.
Like having peace, if by that you mean having a strong sense of
Phrasing awareness, how do you deal with phrase, where can you play within a phrase, you know, it's different than any kind of movement sequence and any kind of oral environment, but just awareness of phrasing.
All those things are, those three are all in ways where you put in between the beat. I mean, putting in terms of on the beat doesn't really matter. So my original thought, I think it really literally one thing. It took me down to the sense that again, we hear us trying to have people hear as deeply as possible the world of sound, a single sustained sound. Voices that thought that we might be there, overless sustained line, 5 minutes for a shot. And all the variation of timbre, volume, color, and one note. Open people's heart to really get that world, then the rest of it go out.
I kind of responded to what you said. Goes along the lines. Doug, I was just thinking that I would love to get a dancer to sincerely really feel the way sound can animate.
I didn't catch.
How sound can animate.
Okay.
I always think of how to do this. And then, but vice versa, how their movement can animate sound. And we'll see that they have power in that equation.
It's interesting. It must have been on the side of the room because something for me about texture, timbre, empowering them to trust the physical connection that they already have with that, and awareness in music and in listening to what that is. So it's all people have said.
You talked about reading. I really
think I already said it, but I don't want to, but I don't know. Which is along the lines of, I mean, it's hard to have a hierarchy because each one of these things is really important, but along the lines of hearing the movement and also seeing the sound, so it comes together for them in a really personal way. But hearing is the thing, and being able to ask questions and go deep into what they're hearing, whether it be sound or the phrasing of their body rhythms.
And as Rob and I were talking, I thought that the important thing is to have a compound sentence would be to be a musical omnivore. Keep open ears, don't limit yourself to whatever world you like musically, but just be open because you're going to grow that way. And listen to music in a musical way, be able to articulate what you're hearing. Rather than, oh, I like it and all this stuff. Yeah, it's nice. You really hear as much as possible what's actually happening.
I want them to know Bach. Oh, Joe's asking me why. Because 2 years ago, I had 47 students in my one semester music for dance class. And I said to them, of course you all know who J.S. Bach is. Who knows who J.S. Bach is? And 2 people raised their hands. So I want them to know Bach. You don't have to love him.
How many of you know